Welcome to GovCon Intelligence. My guest today is Jackie Robinson-Burnette. Jackie, welcome to GovCon Intelligence.
Thank you, Sam. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks so much for coming. Jackie Robinson-Burnette is a nationally recognized authority in federal procurement and a steadfast champion for America's small businesses. A senior executive service leader with more than 35 years of federal service, she built a reputation as a transformational executive known for delivering measurable historic results. After retiring in 2017, she got a call from the White House to return to public service under presidential appointment as the Associate Administrator for Government Contracting and Business Development at the U.S. Small Business Administration, where, by the way, she was my boss. In this role, she oversaw all federal small business contracting programs. Her leadership drove major modernization efforts, including the consolidation of the SBA certification systems, and contributed to a record-setting $183.4 billion in federal small business contract awards for the first time in history. By the way, that's still a record. I'll just mention it's still there. Jackie is the owner and founder of Senior Executive Strategic Solutions, or SES2. She is married to Army Lieutenant Colonel Victor Burnette, retired, and they are the proud parents of 3 adult daughters, all commissioned Army officers.
Yeah.
Jackie, I wanted to start with some somewhat breaking news from SBA, from the policy front. You were there with me for a number of policies, and it's been kind of quiet on policies for a bit right now. There was a size standard proposed rule, but they haven't done much with the fraud rule that they were thinking about doing, and on the program front, there hasn't been much. You ran the 8A program for quite some time at SBA, and then when you were associate administrator, you had the responsibility of oversight over the 8A program. And SBA is proposing to make a change to the 8A program. This is one of the first policy changes to come out from SBA during this administration. They sent a proposed rule to the White House OIRA office May 22nd to delete the presumption of social disadvantage for individual-owned firms only. It's clear that these reforms do not impact entity-owned firms. Could you tell us a bit about the presumption of social disadvantage, why SBA might be removing it, and what do people have to know about this policy change?
Yes, good question. So the presumption of social disadvantage is pretty simple. If you belong to a certain race or ethnic group, you're presumed automatically disadvantaged because of historical discrimination in the United States, especially for black and brown companies. In the 1970s, maybe they had only 1% of all federal government contracts.
Yeah, I think that's right.
When the 8A program was stood up, we realized we could go through a process of determining if these certain groups were disadvantaged, or we could just presume that they are. And so this means when they submitted an application for the 8A program, they didn't have to write out a justification of how they were socially disadvantaged. It was just presumed they checked that box of a certain race or ethnic group, they were automatically disadvantaged. After the Ultima lawsuit, then the SBA removed the social presumption. So every firm that was applying for the 8A program had to outline how they were disadvantaged.
So that's the social disadvantage narrative?
Yes, the social disadvantage narrative that all the firms had to do. Even the firms that were already certified, of course, had to go back and explain how they were disadvantaged. All the firms were frozen in the program, and except the entity-owned firms. And so I think the SBA is now just putting into law, solidifying that every firm has to explain how they are socially disadvantaged, and no certain group can just automatically be presumed socially disadvantaged.
So this is really just a putting into the regulation what it's looked like since Ultima in operation, essentially.
Yeah, basically what is in operation.
Yeah. I mean, you
Since
came
the
in...
Ultima challenge.
When you were a presidential appointee as associate administrator, you came in just about when SBA was bringing applications back after Ultima.
Yes.
So that was thousands of reviews that SBA had to do.
Yes.
To do that.
Definitely. And at this time, of course, we didn't grow the number of certifying officials, certifying team members in the SBA. So they were not processing new applications while they were trying to bring these firms that were suspended back on.
And so Meanwhile, you had the freeze there after Ultima while SBA was trying to figure out this presumption of social disadvantage. Now you have a dark freeze, I'd say, because no one's really talking about it, but the data seems to show that SBA has not approved a new application in the 8A program since August of last year. Now there's a counter on 8afacts.org. The last time I checked, it's 285 days or so. How damaging is that? And how different is that from when you were there? I mean, you ran the 8A program. Going to zero, what difference does that make in the community?
It makes a huge difference because every year, a large percentage of the firms are graduating. Sure. And if we don't replenish that, it means that the program dies. It also means that contracting officers are going to be hesitant for putting actions in the 8A program because it may not have the competitive base of firms to compete for that work. And, historically, we used to say if you put something in the 8A program, it was always in the 8A program, which was not really the case. It just means that you had to get approval from the SBA to pull it out. Contracting officers are now at a greater number pulling acquisitions out of the 8A program because they're able to justify that 1,000 firms were suspended and they don't see that specific number of firms in the program that can compete for their work.
Right, I've been tracking that a lot of firms have withdrawn from the program because of the data call and because of the suspension. So you're now under 4,000. Do you remember how much it was when you were there?
I don't remember the exact number. But when I first came to the SBA back in 2014, I think you were in OGC, OGC at that time. The application process was huge. Like it was a mailing in boxes of paper. It wasn't digitized.
Yeah, I remember the files. When we get the files for OHA, they'd be the same.
Yes. And 60% of the applications were returned or rejected. 60%. And
what happens to 8A contracts if you have a lower number of firms? We're now below 4,000 firms that are in the 8A program.
Well, it's a significant impact, Sam, because contracting officers lose faith in the ability to put actions into the 8A program and have sufficient competition. And as a result, they will start asking the SBA, can they remove those acquisitions from the 8A program? And the program only survives if we continue to put in new companies. And every year we have at least 300 to 400 companies that are graduating.
Right, it's going to be a 10th because it's a 10-year program.
Yes, and so you can actually just look down the line to how many are coming out every year versus how many are coming in to see when there won't be any firms in the program. And we know that 1,000 firms were suspended and some removed from the program over the last year. So this is pretty significant. When I was in the associate administrator of the 8A program position, when I first got there, there were about 1,200 applications every year. And this is back when it was not digitized. We had boxes of paper coming in. 60% of them were rejected or declined, or sent back. And I started looking at how can we streamline this process and why are they being returned? In some cases, 30% of them were being returned because they were applying on the wrong form. And so I kept asking my staff, why are they all applying on the same wrong form? Where's this form at? Well, it was the form on the SBA website.
Oh, no.
So, and then started looking at, are we declining these applications and rejecting them for eligibility issues or for technical paperwork things in the application that has nothing to do with eligibility? And so we just started streamlining the process, brought OGC in, OHA, other groups in the SBA, and we came up with a streamlined application. And we went from, a rate of 90% of the applications being declined. Even, I want you to think about this, 1,200 applications coming in, and then only 25% of them got through the process for a decision to be made, and then 90% of them were declined.
Wow.
So
there are a lot that aren't even getting to the decision, and then even when you get there, it's hard to get
it was
through.
really bad. And so we've turned that around to doing about 1,200 approvals a year. And this last year, I think in 2020, 24 because we were catching up from the freeze on Ultima challenge, and then we were trying to shift into the new certification system. I think we did about 2,000. We processed 2,000 applications.
That's a lot. And
that's a lot.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Some of those firms have probably withdrawn from the program or been suspended, and it just looks like a different program now.
Yeah. Unfortunately. And the thing that makes it worse is that it is once in a lifetime opportunity. Mm-hmm. You get ADA certification once and you can never get it again. So right now, for a lot of political reasons, all of these socially and economically disadvantaged, underrepresented firms are losing their once in a lifetime opportunity to get a foothold in federal government contracting. And that is forever. Like, they can never come back and get that certification again.
Yeah, and on the other side, so that's the individual-owned firms. On the other side, with the entity-owned firms, those entities have really a business strategy of, as firms graduate, they get new firms into the program so they can fill that void in a particular industry or NAICS code. And if you have a freeze that now is probably going to go to 9 months to a year, they can't backfill those firms that are graduated.
That's true. A lot of people, there are people that are against the individual 8A companies as well as the entity-owned companies. And one is they think it's so unfair that the entity-owned companies can regenerate themselves with new 8A companies, spinoffs, new spinoffs. But the difference, of course, that everyone should think about is the individual-owned companies, all that revenue is for them and their family and whatever they want to do with it. The entity-owned company is supposed to be refueling jobs, hospitals, schools, putting money back into those communities that are depressed. And I actually had a chance to go to Alaska and walk through hospitals and schools that were built by additional funds that these entity-owned Alaska Native tribal companies, the contracts that they won, how they put that back into the community.
Yeah. And I just want to remind people that there are numbers out there. The Alaska Native firms get X million dollars in contracts or billions of dollars in contracts, but only so much of that is going back to the community. But that's because on a government contract, you have costs. So
yes.
A $10 million contract might have only a 5% profit margin, which is true. It's really only the profits that you could sink back into the community.
Exactly.
And a lot of these entity-owned firms do put a very large percentage of their profits back into the community. So that's really the metric you should be looking at, not how much are you getting gross in contracts.
Of course, yeah.
So I've seen some inaccuracies out there on that. But you did more than just work on the 8A program while you were at SBA. While we were there, we worked closely on the Rule of Two. We put out a proposed rule from SBA that then became a proposed rule from the FAR. Now there is a Rule of Two bill that is going through Congress. It just passed unanimously through the House Small Business Committee a couple weeks ago. What is the reason for the Rule of Two? Why is it important? And why is it important for small businesses to track this bill as it's going through?
Well, first, Sam, I need to give you kudos for helping get that Rule of Two.
It's all you.
pushed through. I mean, you have been working on that for years. Do you remember how many years you were behind the scenes continuing to put that before new senior executives that came in, different political parties, talking to people on the Hill, talking to OMB. You did that for years.
Well, it's important to note that this is a bipartisan issue. I mean, when you're talking about something that unanimously goes through Congress, there's very little that people can agree on.
Right.
But they can agree on the Rule of Two.
Yeah, definitely. So FAR Part 19 says that when there are two or more small businesses that are capable of bidding on the work and they show interest and they have the ability to bid on the work at a fair market value, that work should be set aside for small businesses. And the Rule of Two, that comes from that, two or more. So when people say, well, where's the Rule of Two? I can't really find that in the FAR. It is that FAR Part 19 if there's two or more. And there were some discussions on how to apply that across federal government contracting. Does it apply to GSA, GWACs? Right. Does it apply to agency-wide IDIQ contracts? And now it is solidified that when there's two or more, this work should be set aside. So when we first implemented category management, and I think the discussions on category management started around 2010 or slightly before, but the way we implemented it, we actually ended up losing 40% of our small business industrial base. So the idea was great to consolidate, get economy of scale, but the contracts were just so huge. And once we made these large contracts, we never thought about making sure that there were small businesses on them. So the actions that could be set aside for small businesses could be set aside. And as a result, we thought large companies would give small businesses subcontracts. And in some cases, they did, but you still lose your industrial base when you don't have prime awards for small companies. And so I think we went backwards in terms of building our industrial base, and then we kind of learned a little bit from that. And now pushing forward with the rule of two, all of these category management contracts that are coming out have small business set-aside provisions in them. So you have pools for large and small companies, or if they're all together, now you can use the rule of two to set aside work if small companies can do it on those vehicles. So I think it's very important.
Yeah, the bill that passed from the House committee put that task orders are specifically excluded from the coverage of the rule of two. But the point that you made is an important one, that a lot of these GWACs have pools. And when you were there, we worked together on the MAS pool.
Yes.
Remember the GSA schedule pool for 8A. So the rule of two, in my view, becomes less important when you have all of those pools available, because agencies can go and use those set-asides on the pools.
Yes.
They don't necessarily need the
those
push of
decisions.
the rule of two.
Yeah.
So it makes a bit of sense in the world where you have a lot of pools to look at the rule of two on a contract level rather than going all the way to the task order level. I think reasonable people can disagree on that. I certainly had a different viewpoint on that, but I do recognize that these big GWACs like Oasis Plus and Polaris are coming out with pools, and they're pools that include women-owned small business and HUBZone, which we haven't seen in the past. We've had 8A stars and vets, but these are the first vehicles that have that special women-owned set aside, and that's really important for that program. But nevertheless, that program is under attack. It's the next one after the 8A program. We've seen a lot of movement on 8A, but now women-owned small business program is under threat by certain members of Congress. They're looking at killing the program entirely. Now, you made a big effort while you were at SBA to address a very long women-owned small business backlog of applications.
Yes.
I think it was at a year at some point. People were waiting over a year.
Definitely.
What happened there?
Well, before we consolidated the certification system, you could be a service-disabled vet, female service-disabled vet, and submit an application and get certified as a service-disabled vet in 2 weeks. But then you'd have to submit a separate application into the women-owned portal, and that could take a year and a half, because that program wasn't funded well. Veteran program was funded very well. The women-owned certification program wasn't. It was understaffed. And once we consolidated the systems, then now we can submit one application, check box, and a company will get all their certifications at the same time. Oh, okay. Now, of course, since 2025, the applications that also include 8A certification have stalled.
Okay, interesting.
Because the SBA is not able to just make a decision on some of the certifications and not the other. And they don't want to make decisions on the 8A applications. So that whole package gets stalled.
So that's an important point. If you're thinking about women-owned plus maybe veteran plus 8A, you would get caught up in the 8A freeze.
Yes.
Okay.
So you have to make a decision now whether you want to pull your application back and take 8A off the table and get your other certifications and then apply for 8A later. But women-owned small businesses are still underrepresented in the federal government contracting space. Even with the 5% goal, they're getting less than 5%. Right. The set-asides, we've never set aside anywhere near 5% of the work in order to reach the 5%. The way that women are winning is because they're competing as a veteran, 8A, or small business, and those contracts still show up as a women-owned small business contract if they are certified. But you rarely see women-owned small business set-asides. And so they are still underrepresented. I just think about, it was only a couple of years ago at the SBA that we removed the requirement for a woman to have her husband, who had no affiliation with her company, to sign on a loan application.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Just a few years ago.
Just a few years ago. The husband could be unemployed, uneducated, not working, and the woman could be educated, winning $1 million of contracts, but she had to get her husband's approval to apply for a loan for her business. So we changed that. But women they need to persevere. I think about some of the women that have done some remarkable things in the federal space in bringing innovation. And you lose that ability to have smart women like the woman who helped create the GPS system, or the woman who did the math for the trajectory of NASA and John Glenn for the space shuttle. It was a woman, African-American woman, that helped come up with the COVID vaccine. Wow. So when you think about, I'm going to, not consider opportunities for this group, those are the things that you lose. And I want us to think about, what is the percentage? 5%. So we're just asking for women to get 5%. We kind of skipped over the percent for the 8A firms, but I also want to just stress, Sam, that still with 8A, only 3% of the contracts get awarded through 8A procedures. 3%. And that means that leaves 97% for everything else.
Well, yeah, if you look at sole source contracts, there's a big deal about 8A is ripe for fraud because it's mostly a sole source program. The amount of sole source contracts that go through the 8A program as compared to the whole is tiny.
Yeah, it really is. And half of that 3% that is awarded through the 8A procedures, half of that is going to the entity-owned companies, and then the other half is going to those firms that we want to say are DEI, race-based, ethnic group firms. So that's 1.5%. So this whole target of fraud and all of this push is to really stop the 1.5%. Can they have the 1.5%? And regardless of whether it's a sole source award or a competitive award, none of this is free money. It's an opportunity to work and create jobs and give jobs, because whatever firm wins that contract has to have a line of credit or funding to do the work. And then after they do the work and it's accepted by the government, they can submit an invoice for the work to be paid. But none of this is free money. It's opportunity for job creation, really.
Yeah, that's the multiplier effect. And I remember at SBA, they did a study about which program had the largest multiplier effect. And it was actually the women-owned program, which had the largest multiplier effect of all of them. So that was a good support for the program. Maybe it has something to do with the industry designations that you have to get this NAICS code approval list from SBA. Only 70% of the NAICS codes are in that. But as this program is under attack with the bill that's out there that would eliminate the program, what is it that small businesses and of any type, women-owned small businesses or whatnot, can do to recognize the importance of the program if they feel it is important?
I think Congress definitely has to be engaged in solidifying the importance of this program. And so women-owned small businesses really need to petition those that represent them in Congress, those that they voted for that are in Congress, and stress the importance. When the 8A program was under attack, I explained to all the other companies, because it doesn't impact you doesn't mean it doesn't matter. It's important for all of us to fight for all these programs because there's room at the table for everyone. So those of you that are not women-owned small businesses, just because that doesn't apply to you, it doesn't mean it's not something you should be fighting for, because the attacks start on one group and then they roll down to the rest. Yeah. So we now see 8A, now it's women-owned, but it's important because women-owned small businesses, like you said, they create jobs, they generate solutions, and it's important that they have a place at the table.
Oh, you mentioned what people can do with 8A. What's your prediction for the 8A program? Where do you see it in 5-10 years?
Yeah, the 8A program has survived so many attacks. Like so many attacks it has survived. So I think this is a recalibration again of the program. I think it can definitely come back strong. In the meantime, it's important for companies to continue to bid and compete and strengthen their past performance with other set-asides. Even if they're capable, go after unrestricted opportunities for firms to team up, for companies to engage in the mentor protege program. You may have a 8A company that, what's the sad thing right now is that 8A companies may be going through the program and opportunities are diminishing. Their certifications may be threatened all the time. I just had a 8A company that lost 50 employees overnight from USDA, and it's not because USDA didn't need the work. They took the work and modified it under a large business contract.
To a large business.
And no one's paying attention. Can't get anybody on the phone to look at it, discuss it. And I think it was for political reasons, honestly, because the work was still needed, and this just isn't something that should occur. It's not even allowed in the FAR to take work that is within the scope of another contract and terminate it for convenience and then just roll it into an unrestricted vehicle.
Yeah, the new FAR, the FAR overhaul says you can shift 8A to HUBZone or women-owned service. It doesn't say you can go to a large business.
Yes. And typically that, if you're going to do that, it would be you decide not to exercise an option, or you wait till a contract expires, but just not in the middle of a performance period. So I think the program can come back stronger, though. I actually do. And definitely we're not going to have the social, the presumption of social disadvantaged, but I think firms don't need it. They can write their story. What's important is we have to have people that are objective to look at those stories and make the right decisions. And I think the SBA will be shifting towards that. I think people just need to stay encouraged. It's a time of high anxiety for companies, but I think we will come out of this. Sometimes I like to use my Bible verses, but this too will pass.
And it may come back in a different form than it looked before. You're already seeing, for example, the Army has come out reportedly and told its contracting officers don't use sole source. So maybe you're looking more at competitive or things like 8A stars, maybe other vehicles that could include only 8A firms. Do you predict that other agencies, USDA, for example, would follow Army in that movement?
I think,
and how does 8A look after that?
Across the federal government, there's an undercurrent where contracting officers are being told not to award sole source 8A.
Sole source.
The SBA definitely needs to give waivers so they can be in compliant and allow those contracts under $5.5 million to be competitive. So I hope they will continue to put contracts in the 8A program at every dollar amount, because if you say don't do it under 5.5 million and there's no authority to compete at that level, then those contracts aren't even going to go into the 8A program. They're going to be competed elsewhere, because the rule says under that threshold it has to be sole source. So that needs to be addressed too. And when I was in the 8A program, I gave the Corps of Engineers a waiver. So anything they wanted to compete at that time was 4.5 million. Under that, they could just do it. And that's the better solution. But contracting officers are being called on the carpet if they're trying to award or keep things in the...
Right.
So I think competition is definitely going to increase for those. But the bottom line is the federal government will always need sole source contracts. Like they will always. I spent most of my career in DOD, and in DOD things hit the fan overnight, and you need someone to go and set up camp in another country or handle a catastrophe like Katrina. The Army Corps of Engineers, we need people out putting roofs on buildings. Like, you don't have time to do a full competition. Sometimes you just need to get a contract in the hand of a company and say, go out there and start passing out water. picking people up on a bus and driving them out of the war zone or wherever there has been a FEMA disaster. Like all of those contracts, they can't be competitive. You can have IDIQ vehicles in place, but once a task order is going to be awarded, right? Those task orders, if there's multiple awards, you still have to have a need for sole source contracts. So you don't have the time. You don't have time to compete. And of course, we always have FAR Part 6, where you can do a justification. So it's not necessarily going to an 8A company, but for the government, why go through the whole approval process of a FAR Part 6 acquisition when I can go to an entity-owned 8A and get exactly what I need? It doesn't mean that you're going to pay double, because each of those contracts still have a IGC, independent government estimate, and where we make a determination of what it should cost. And when there's some emergencies where we say go and we'll figure out the cost later. But even still, they can't bill for something that's unreasonable, because the government's going to determine what it should cost.
Yeah, and even with the emphasis on competition, you're seeing some agencies, National Park Service, it sounds like, are discovering the ease of sole source contracts. There was news that Lafayette Park, renovation of Lafayette Park is under a sole source contract, and there are other contracts in the DC area as part of this beautification that are under sole source contracts as well.
Possibly,
yes.
Yeah, possibly.
One thing you did when you were in the associate administrator position is you changed the certification process for the programs, combining all of them together. Why did you do that? And were you somehow anticipating what could happen today? Because it actually is very important you did it that way. Tell us a bit about why it's so important.
First, I never anticipated what's going on right now. I just can't imagine that it would happen the way that it is. But I was retired, happy, enjoying myself in Florida when I got this call from the White House to come back. And it was a huge financial sacrifice for me to shut down my company and come back. I always used to tell you all, I'm here for GS9 pay. And that was true. But at the time, what the administrator Isabel Guzman, she really wanted to do this, and this was part of her vision. And she had this idea, we were talking about this, maybe 9 years earlier, before I had retired, back in 2016-17, we wanted to streamline the processes. And this was even before the Service Disabled Vet program came over to the SBA. But when I arrived, I, looked at what we had. We had 4 different systems: 8A, Women-Owned, HUBZone, Veteran. There were 4 different teams, 4 different leaders, executives running those teams. So if you were a woman-owned, veteran, socially disadvantaged company, you had to submit the same application to 3 different systems. If you were in the HUBZone, also to 4 different systems, to the same tax returns, same business documents, to be reviewed by 4 different teams that are right there in the SBA, all on the same floor, looking at the same taxes, the same governing documents to make a decision. And so the veteran-owned program funded well. You could get processed in 2 weeks. And the only difference in that veteran-owned application for the women-owned program was the birth certificate to show that you were a woman. But it would take a year and a half to get the women-owned certification, right? Because they weren't just looking at the birth certificate. That team was looking at all the stuff that the veteran-owned team had already looked at. And then the same for 8A. Now you're looking at economic disadvantage and social disadvantage. And so we consolidated all of those team members into one team. Shut down all 4 IT systems, created one IT system that would take an application and allow us to check the boxes. That meant I had to train all of the processors on every application. So if a person that used to just work in the women-owned small business program, they had to learn the veteran-owned rules, the 8A rules, the HUBZone rules, because if they got an application that had those boxes checked, they had to know how to read the reg and apply it. And so that was a big deal, to change all of the performance requirements for all of those employees, change their job descriptions, and then train them on all those applications before going live. It was a huge deal. And then, of course, all the applications that were in the old systems, we wanted to get those all processed. And I came to the SBA in January, and we wanted to get all of those applications processed, probably 3 years worth of applications for women in 8A by August, so we could go live on the new system. So it was a lot to do, but we were successful and got it all done, really, I think 4 years worth of work done in 1 year.
Wow.
In addition, you were on the forefront of going through, now that we're consolidating this, what are the rules and regulations that need to be changed? What do we need to change in the CFR? Because there's things that have a little difference in how these applications are being viewed. What are some of the things that we could just say, this will apply to all? And so you did all of those regs and changes, and I mean, it was just a lot. It was a lot of work, but I'm so happy. Someone just posted recently on LinkedIn that they submitted an application for renewal, an application to renew their certification. Okay. So not for an initial, but to renew. And they submitted, and within seconds, it came back approved.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Because there are some things that once you answer the questions in the system, you don't need a person to touch that application.
Okay.
And so previously, you'd have to submit to 4 different teams who would review with their eyes whether you continued to be eligible. And you'd have to wait. And now you submit it once, and it's coming back instantly if all the boxes check.
Well, the genius of it is, and this came up when very early in this administration, the White House was cutting what they call DEI offices. I remember there was an office at EPA where they said, we're just going to eliminate this whole office.
Yes.
And the genius of consolidating the programs is there's not an 8A certification office that you can cut.
Yes, exactly. Now, as I was trying to convince the staff, because some staff members, it wasn't easy, right?
Yeah, change is always hard.
Yeah, some of the staff members want to know, well, I was a GS-13 processing one application. Why am I going to be a GS-13? And I have to now review and be competent in all of the application processes. And there was a time when I told them things change as we move forward. And because of the Ultima challenge, and we still hadn't received a decision on the Ultima challenge, like what's going to be the judge's decision on us removing the presumption? Is that going to be enough? I explained to the team it's important that you diversify and you become a team, because now if they cut the 8A program, that's one office and employees that would go. And so yes, that they don't have that now because they're all one. And of course, the same thing would happen with the women, which was a small group of people. But if you cut the women-owned program, well, we don't need that certification process anymore. Yeah,
it probably saved people's jobs and kept the 8A certification process going, because otherwise you can just cut an entire office. And I mean, you've seen this elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's not that the functions go away, but you just cut that whole office, and then of course that work isn't getting done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This was all part of very tumultuous 2025 at SBA across contracting. It does seem to me that things have calmed down a bit. I mean, you haven't heard nearly as much out of SBA and others about the suspensions and 8A program. You run a successful consulting firm now. You have a very busy speaking schedule coming up. You're headed to New Orleans this week for the VETS conference. What is the sentiment among small businesses that you're talking to right now in mid-2025, mid-2026? Are they optimistic, or are they still reeling from that tumultuous 2025?
A lot of companies went bankrupt.
Wow.
And this is what's not in the news, right? But a lot of companies went bankrupt. When you have 10 contracts and 9 end up, become a word now, doged. My contracts got doged. A lot of companies went bankrupt. Those that are persevering and staying with it, they still have anxiety, and because they don't know what's next. Like I told you, it was just last month, within the last 30 days, that a company at USDA just lost 50 employees. That's huge for a small business, because the average small business has 25 employees. So if they got to the point where they have 50, that's a large number of their employees. But the other thing that makes it difficult for the companies to continue to persevere is their access to capital has changed. Because it used to be when a bank saw a contract that had a base and 4 options, they felt confident to give a small business a loan because they could give them a line of credit or a loan to perform. They knew that at least that base year would be finished and the company could repay them back. But now in the middle of a base year or middle of an option, contracts can just be terminated. So it's difficult, making it more difficult for banks, for small companies to get loans from banks, which then could tip them into predatory lenders, which, exacerbates the whole problem.
That's interesting. So their cost of capital goes up because of the
does.
uncertainty around whether contracts will go to full
Exactly,
term.
because small business contracts aren't as stable anymore. But we need some clear guidance from Congress and the SBA on the future of all of the programs. We need stability in how contracting officers are going to treat small business contracts. Like, they are our partners. When you think about a business, small businesses that support and serve the federal government are the federal government's partners. How do you treat your partners?
Right.
Like, how do you treat your business partners? And it's important for them to have some type of stability. I think companies are not consolidating, but they're teaming up more.
Oh, okay.
So acquisitions are getting larger.
Because of bigger contracts.
Yes, and small businesses can't go after them on their own. So they're teaming up to work together. They're supporting each other. And where they're not able to pick up the phone and get advice and guidance from the SBA or the OSDBU offices that have been gutted, they are calling each other and learning from each other. And I always thought that the best way for a small business to learn is from another small business. But it doesn't mean that the SBA, SCORE, Apex Accelerator, all of these entities need to lean backwards. They still need to lean forward and really do more now.
You mentioned that you came back from retirement to join the SBA, and part of your call was to create this unified certification system.
Yes.
So now you're over a year out, maybe a year and a half now. So was it worth it to go back into government?
It definitely was worth it. It definitely was. I want my legacy not to be everything that I've gotten for myself, but the number of ways that I've helped other people. Like, that's what I want my legacy to be about. It's not just about what I do for myself. And I think about all of the companies that were certified. I think about the companies that were inspired by ability to knock on the door at the SBA and receive assistance. And I think it's important because, jobs were created. We see things shifting now, but jobs were created, companies were certified, and contracts were won as a result. And I think most importantly is, for the first time in probably 10 years, the team in the Government Contracting Business Development Office worked collaboratively together to make tremendous change for small businesses when they streamlined these processes and consolidated this certification. This was huge. Like, it will go down in history. Like, for years to come. It was just such a smart decision. And I definitely came back to help lead it, but I wasn't the brains behind it. And so really being able to put what needed to be done on the table and watch all the smart people in the SBA, like you, like Von Tran, like Larry Stubblefield, come to the table with the solutions and make this happen was, sometimes I think about the hard work, late nights that all of these government employees put in, and it just brings tears to my eyes, which, I always talked about leadership. And when you're leading public servants, it's important that you understand the sacrifice that they're making to serve publicly. I mean, probably you realize now, wow, I could have got out a long time ago and made all of this money that I'm making. But you make a sacrifice to say, I'm going to serve my country. But you make more money outside. And so when you look at people that have committed their life to public service, you have to lead them with integrity and character, and they have to know that you value what they bring to the table. And I was never the smartest, that. I was never the smartest person at the table. It was all of the leaders around me. And that has been the way that I led, is to say, hey, here's the problem. Let's put it on the board. What do you all think we need to do to get this fixed? And so, yes, it was worth it because of the things we accomplished and because I was able to allow leaders to step forward and do something miraculous.
Well, that's a tremendous effort that you led to consolidate the certification programs, and made a huge difference now to have this 8A program at least still have be able to fight another day because of the work that we did together.
Yes.
I'll get you out of here on this. When we worked together in about 2024, I remember Leaders Eat Last.
Oh, yes, yes, that book. Yeah.
We had a good story about that. I'm not going to share it.
No, we should share it. We should share it.
And then the bus, right?
Yes,
the bus.
get the right people are on the bus. Get
Jim the right
Collins,
people on the bus.
Great.
Any additional leadership stories or tips that you want to? You named your company SES. I know leadership is very important to you.
Yes.
The path to senior executive service is important to you. What would you tell our listeners about leadership?
Well, another book that I love to talk about is How Successful People Lead by Jim Collins. And this book is so simple. And if any leader, aspiring leader, just would read this book, it takes about an hour to read. But it says getting the position of leadership is just the first level. Like, that's the first level of leadership. And it doesn't really mean you're a leader, it just means you have the position. And you don't really get to the point where you start being able to make change until you get to level 2, where you start engaging and building relationship with your workforce, and they know you and they trust you. Because just because you got the position doesn't mean that they trust you or that you care or value them. So you've got to get to that level 2 in order to get to level 3, which is where you can bring change. And a lot of leaders want to get the position and come in and make change, but you've got to get the position, then develop the trust of the workforce, and then you can get to level 3 to make change. And then level 4 is developing other leaders. And so, that's what you want to constantly be doing. That's what your legacy should be, is developing and producing other leaders. And you do that by, making sure they have an opportunity to lead something. And not you as a leader being the only voice of authority in the room. I think that is a level 1 leader who comes in and says, it's my way or the highway. I don't care if people like me. I don't care if people want to listen to me. They have to, because I'm the boss. That's a level 1 leader. And you always want to aspire to be greater than that. And you can't get to those higher leaders levels until you develop relationship with your people and then execute change and then develop other leaders. So when we did the certification program process, that's what you saw, is me getting the position, then developing the trust with the people, and then putting people in position where they could work their pieces to make change and execute, whether, okay, my piece is policy, my piece is IT, my piece is the personnel, and doing that and then letting them lead it. So you develop other leaders, and that is what a good leader is.
And that's been very important, as you're not there anymore, I'm not there anymore. The leadership, many of them have left, and the SBA is continuing to serve small businesses, and it's because of that development of additional leaders. It's been so fun going down memory lane with you and talking about these policies that we worked on, the certification system. Jackie, if people want to contact you, how do they find you?
Best place to contact me is on LinkedIn. Then you'll get a chance to see me. I respond on messaging to LinkedIn. We can connect that way. I'll get to see your face. You get to see mine. And Sam, thank you so much. I want to thank you for everything that you did while I was there, because I absolutely would not have been successful achieving the things that we did in that 1 year, which, like I said, was 4 years worth of work in 1 year, without leaders like you. And I depended on you a lot. I took you to every meeting with me, with the administrator, because, she was deep into the regs. I used to say, she's in the weeds. And if she asks a tough question, I need the smart people with me. And so I always brought you. And I just appreciate how you served, how you lead, how you built your team. It was just amazing. And even when there was an opportunity for me to kind of promote you and move you higher to supervise 2 other senior executives, you said, let me stay here because I'm just building my team. And so like that meant the world to me, is that you weren't there for position or title. You were there for the work and for policy and doing the right thing for small businesses. So I appreciate you. It meant the world to me.
Oh, thank you. We did a lot of great work together, and thank you for trusting me to support you and support the administrator. You can see it in the policies that we put out.
Yeah.
We have not done nearly as many policies in these last year and a half than we had when we were at the SBA. But I think we truly listened to small businesses, tried to figure out what we could do from a government perspective to help them. And I think we did a lot of good.
We did.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Jackie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, everybody.